Hello and welcome to the Embrace Your Destiny podcast. My name is Sandra Dawes and I'm your host. And if you're new to the podcast, this is all about sharing the journeys of women who have been through a challenging time in their life. And they're going to share the journey, the lessons they've learned, and offer some advice for those of you who may be going through something similar in your own life. And today we have Jennifer Pennell, and Jennifer is a play and meditation specialist, sought after for her unique approach to personal growth. She helps women of all ages relearn how to play as a way to improve vitality, unleash creativity, reduce anxiety, and be present in their lives. Her 10 years of intense meditation studies, coupled with 15 years as an executive search consultant, working with Fortune 500 companies, has helped her support over 150 clients reduce stress and anxiety in the bodies. Doing so has allowed her clients more easeful living and better relationships with themselves, their partners, and their life. She has facilitated over 20 workshops centered around play, meditation, empowerment, and wildness. Additionally, Jennifer has over 1,000 hours as an IST Practitioner, a meditation-based healing and regression modality. Jennifer lives in San Diego with her husband and 2 teenagers. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for being my guest today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Sandra.
So Jennifer, why don't you start off with sharing the journey that really, I guess, was your turning point?
Sure, absolutely. And my journey it's kind of a funny one, actually. It started a little over 10 years ago. And at that time, I was in my mid-30s and I had arrived. I had a loving husband. I had 2 beautiful kids. I had a nice remodeled home, a white picket fence, the dog, and a successful corporate career. I was not as passionate about it as I had been earlier in my career, but it was still financially rewarding and working with my life quite well. So here I was. I had arrived. I had all of this love and abundance, and I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable, and I didn't know why. I could point to a couple things. Lost the passion for work, whatnot. But largely, I was so ashamed because here I was. I couldn't figure out why I was so unhappy, and yet I was. And when I looked around me, it was like I had no business being unhappy. It just felt like I didn't deserve to. I had everything. And so not only was I miserable, but I couldn't tell anyone.
Right, because it almost feels like you're complaining about really nothing, because so many other people would be like, but you have everything, you should be grateful. And
yes, exactly. It's what am I gonna, it's like, oh, poor me, my life is so great. It was confusing, and it was really hard. And so I hit it. And so what happened is that, it's like I kept trying to sweep it under the rug. And so it just kept getting worse and worse until it had really infiltrated my entire life. And my baseline level of happiness, I should say it was a strong baseline of dissatisfaction. There really wasn't much happiness at all. It's kind of embarrassing, but at one point I even put a note up in my office of the things that I thought made me happy. And when I looked at the list much later, I was like, dancing in the rain? Are you kidding me? Did I pull this off? Where did I even get that? It doesn't rain in San Diego.
Sounds like a Facebook post or something.
Yes, exactly.
Memes. Yeah.
Exactly. So I hit a point where it was really clear, I didn't know what I needed to do, but it was clear that I needed to do something, and something big. And I'm not really sort of a halfway person. So it was I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was, I needed to leave my husband, change careers, leave the country, have an affair. These are all things that I considered. And they're not small things. I mean,
no, really shaking things up.
yeah, exactly. There's like I felt like I was walking this edge of imploding my life, quite frankly. But I didn't know what else to do. Nothing in moderation seemed to work. And excuse me. And so I hit this point, and lucky for me, before I sort of embarked on any of these sort of, I don't know, lines to implosion,
Right.
I actually found meditation. And I wasn't looking for it. And had you asked me even 6 months earlier, do you think you could meditate? I would have laughed in your face. I mean, it never even occurred to me. And yet, sometimes at the right time, things present themselves. And so meditation presented itself to me. And I mean, I grabbed on like it was my life preserver. It was the thing that presented itself, and I felt like I was drowning. It's like, no, I'm grabbing onto this. And I did, and I dove deep, and I haven't stopped since, actually. And it's interesting because there's a number of pieces connected to the meditation, but through the meditation and through a lot of what I did was the IST work, which you mentioned in my bio as what I'm a practitioner of. It's a meditation related healing modality. But really, the key is I just needed to start looking inside. I was actually having an internal crisis, and I needed to understand what was happening. And through meditation and these meditation related techniques, I just dove in, and it was amazing how much changed. Even in within 6 months, 8 months. And the best way to put it is like, I've been living from this place of dissatisfaction in my life. So things would happen, right? A dissatisfying thing would happen, and it lands into an already existing foundation of dissatisfaction. And it's like, it feels really big and really bad. Whereas now, like, my life is not so different, but my relationship to my life is really different. And so what I would say is, like, now I sort of operate from my foundation as a state of well-being versus dissatisfaction. So dissatisfying things can still happen, but when they sort of land into a foundation of well-being, they just don't hit in the same way.
Right. It's not the same effect because really your perspective has shifted.
Exactly.
Well, right. So yeah, it's, I think that's the big thing for me when you say like you dove full into meditation. For me, it was affirmations, because after my dad died, I was in such a dark place and I didn't know how to be happy again. And I was, quite the negative Nelly. So for me, it was really finding a way to embrace positivity again. But I know what you mean even about meditation, because when I first started, I didn't think I could do it because, you have that preconceived notion of meditation and, sitting cross-legged with your thumb and your finger touching and you're just chanting Om. And for me, I was like, there's no way that I could sit for 5 minutes doing that. Never mind 20 minutes or a half an hour. But meditation is a part of my daily practice now as well. But it was just finding what worked for me and easing myself into it. And so for me, it was guided meditation that really helped to start me off. And then, diving into, chanting and different things like that afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the great thing about meditation is that there's so many, they say there's like 1,000 ways to enlightenment. You just have to find the one that works for you.
Yes.
And so it's really fabulous in this day and age. There's so many great modalities and different ways to access meditation that, it's like, if the first one doesn't speak to you, it doesn't mean that meditation doesn't speak to you.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, it's one of those things for anyone who's curious or interested in meditation. I would absolutely just say, hey, if you go for one and it's not working, like, it doesn't mean meditation's not working. It's like exercise, right? Just because you hate to run doesn't mean you shouldn't exercise.
Right. Yeah.
or you won't find one that you love, like you may love Zumba. And so, I mean, I was the same way. Like, I thought there was no way I could sit still for 5 minutes. My mind raced constantly. I just didn't think it was possible. But it's funny, right? Like 10 years later, I meditate, like 45 minutes a day, and I can't wait.
Right.
And I have a really great life. And it's still one of my favorite parts of my day. So it's really funny.
Yeah, I can't remember who I heard it from, but I remember hearing that, prayer is when you speak to God and meditation is when you listen.
Mm.
And I love that concept because although I think I misinterpreted it at first because then I expected the answers to come during meditation. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes the answers pop up later on in the day or whatever, but it's just, silencing or quieting the mind and just being open to receiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so well said. And to your point, Sandra, like you're right. Like, there's so many times when it may feel like nothing's happening in meditation. And then the answer does come after meditation later in the day. And there's something so powerful, inside and outside of meditation, about being able to sort of hold the thing, like hold the question, hold the what it is you want, being able to just sort of hold something and not need an answer right away.
Right.
It's like, because sometimes we sort of push for an answer when in fact, like if we can just keep holding it, the answer can come to us, and it's so much more easeful. Like it's just so much, there's so much less work involved.
Right. Yeah. I think I was saying this in another interview that I think that we have to almost teach patience as an art form again, because I feel like we've sort of, like, patience isn't something that's practiced very often anymore. I find.
No, it's not even valued.
Right. So we're in this instant gratification. I want it and I want it now. And so to practice patience, to have faith that the answers will come and not be trying to control when they happen or how they happen is such a big thing. And I know that for me, that ability to surrender has been a godsend, literally, because I think that when I try to force things to happen or try to force the answers, then you don't hear the answers that you're actually looking for.
Yes, exactly. And surrender is such a good word, because I would say it was such a big part of my journey too, because again, like so many years in corporate America, like surrender, like there's
isn't that a sign of weakness?
Completely, right? So like I was really well armored against receiving, against opening, against surrender. And it meant that I was running on fumes. I was really like my cup was never full. And so that piece, and it took me a long time. Like I really was bought into, you work hard and you make things happen and it's got to come from me. All of that is so built into sort of the sense of how you get things done in corporate America, or in most corporations anywhere in the world, frankly. That to begin to learn how to kind of surrender and to hold questions, hold things for the timing. And it's not passive. The ability to sort of hold a question and keep holding it is not a passive thing, and yet you're not doing something.
Right.
Yeah. And the surrendering to that is really quite an active force. And I would say it takes an incredible amount of strength and willingness and vulnerability to do that. And that's when like the cup starts to fill up again.
Yeah. I think that fulfillment piece is something that so many of us are missing, but we don't realize it, right? Because much like you said, you had the perfect life on paper, right? You had the family, you had the job, you had the house, but there's so much more to life than that, right? But I think that our society tells us that should be enough, right? That you don't really, that this whole idea of achieving fulfillment or, really feeling good about the things that you're doing, that it's not just about the money. It's not just about the material things. is something that I think there's more awareness starting to come from that. But it's still something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, and it's really funny. I mean, I'm going to jump in with, I don't know, the lesson or the advice on this, but the point you make is so poignant, because that's exactly it. Like, I had arrived at what was this sort of American dream, right? And it turns out it actually wasn't even my dream. It's like, that's the thing, is that, like, we start about and we, start achieving, and we go, okay, this is, we will get here. And when we get there, we will be happy. And that's sort of, it may come from our family, it may come from society, but we buy into it. And so we, like, we start trekking our way to there, which was, again, all of these kind of surrounded by material success, abundance, these pieces. And, and then you get there and you're like, wait a second, this is it? Like, this is actually not all it's cracked up to be. And I'm not happy. And so the beauty, do you want to jump in?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, the beauty of it is that, like, in that moment when I arrived there, it's like, crap, these aren't even my dreams.
Yeah.
They're not even my dreams. So what it did was it was a grace, because I could stop pursuing, these ambitions and these dreams that were sort of like in the ether that I grabbed and ran with. And I could kind of say, God, they're not mine. So now I have the opportunity to say, look, what are my dreams? Like, what do I want? What do I want that is independent of what my family wants from me, of what society wants from me, of what my job wants of me, even what my husband or what my kids want of me.
Right. Yeah. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, where I was sharing with her my theories on the midlife crisis. And I said, I believe that people who, do the quote unquote right thing, they go to school, they get that post-secondary degree or diploma, they get the job, they get married, they have the kids, so you do all the steps that we're told are supposed to bring us that joy, happiness, and fulfillment. So we do all of that. We toe the line. We're not the rebels. We don't do all the wild and crazy stuff. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, what the hell? Because I did everything I thought I was supposed to do, but I'm not any happier. And I look at my friends who have not towed the line, who have lived more freely, not within the boundaries of what we were quote unquote supposed to do. And they're having fun, and they seem to be really fulfilled and living the life that I kind of want a piece of right now. And so I think that that's where the midlife crisis comes from, because you get angry, right? You can get angry about the fact that you've done everything that you were supposed to do.
You played the game, right? Like, you played the game
according to the rules, and you still feel like you're losing. And the people who didn't follow the rules, who created their own rules, are having all the fun. And I think that that's why you get the affairs and the, the sports cars, or I need to, take a 6-month sabbatical and see the world, because these are all things we've always wanted to do, but we're told that we're irresponsible or not, the right thing to do, whatever. And so we haven't done them, but they were things that we've been called to do for whatever reason. And we've tried to stuff them down because we're trying to be responsible adults. And there just becomes a point where we don't want to play that rule by those rules anymore.
It's so true. And I think, it's like with women in particular, like there's a couple sort of even additional pieces, right? Because sometimes it's anger and sometimes it's resentment, right?
Yes.
I think
that's the other big piece.
I feel like with women, a lot of times it comes out more in resentment of like I'm giving everything to my family, to my job. And like, where's the giving to me? Like, where's because we don't give.
Where's my turn? Yeah,
totally. And it's like when we give and we give and we give, and all these aspects of our life, and it's really, again, sort of not really wired in society to say, yes, now you should give to yourself. We tend to be very selfless and put ourselves last, or and that explodes because again, like we're running on fumes, and frankly, like even when you enjoy giving, when you're running on fumes, you're doing it from a place of scarcity.
Right.
So no wonder there's resentment. So it's like when we fill up our own cup, when we give to ourselves, when we take time for meditation or take time for ourselves in the ways that we as women really want and need, in our own sort of whatever the self-care is, then like our cup runneth over and we can give in great measure.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes we hear so much about self-care, and a lot of women out there will tell themselves they don't have time for that and almost think that it's an act of selfishness to take that time out for themselves.
Yes.
But I tell my clients that at the end of the day, when you take that time out for yourself, when you can take the time to fill your cup up, then you're going to be of better service to the people in your life that you want to be of service to. And because you won't have any of that anger or resentment or overwhelm and frustration. Like you might experience that overwhelm or frustration, but you'll know what you need to do to balance it out and get back to a place of being able to function in a more productive way.
Yes. That's so well said. And I can speak about it because I was that person. I was that person who was really resentful and constantly giving and then constantly on empty, for sure. So yeah, I can absolutely relate. And not feeling like like I'm only going to give to myself when everyone else is taken care of, and it just it doesn't work.
No, not at all. Jennifer, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned from this experience?
There's a couple lessons. One, shame doesn't get anybody anywhere. So the shame that I had was not going to help me out. And if we don't catch the little things become big things. So for me, it developed into a crisis. So I'd say sort of like the lesson sort of on the way down were there. And then, like my life doesn't look that different. I still have the same husband, the same kids, and, different career, but I live in the same neighborhood. Largely my life doesn't look that different. So, one of the pieces is that taking the risk to explore what you want and what's happening inside does not actually mean you're going to have to implode your life. It does not mean that you're going to have to go, be in a cave on a hilltop in solitude, in isolation, or, it's like, it doesn't mean that your life needs to blow up. It's more about finding a relationship to your life that can bring the kind of abundance that you want.
Yeah, it's really about doing the work on yourself. It's not changing the external variables isn't going to make your life any better if you don't do the work on yourself.
No. And I haven't talked about this piece, but another lesson, this emerged out of the meditation, is that I started doing workshops for women on play, which I know you mentioned in the bio. And the thing is like, you can find a sense of play or fun in any moment. So I was the woman who was like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time. Like, it was always like, I don't have time. And so my relationship with time was rough, but like, there are ways that you can find the pleasure and the joy in each moment, even if it's a hard moment. The other day, like my son was really upset and he's a teenager, he's 15. So like he was having a moment and we were in the car and I was like, okay, you've got 30 seconds. You can say whatever swear words you want at the top of your lungs for like the next 30 seconds. And it was like, it shifted everything. We went from kind of batting at each other to like, he just exploded. He let it out. And like halfway through, he just started laughing.
Right.
Because here he was in the car with his mom saying everything he wasn't supposed to say.
Right. He's like, woohoo, carte blanche.
Yeah. And so like giving ourselves permission in these moments that like, even in a hard moment or a tough moment or a sad moment, to like find a way to play with it, is really powerful.
I would agree with that. And I find that the more laughter I have in my day, the easier, no matter what craziness might be going on, if I can find something to have a good belly laugh about, then yeah, it's all going to be okay. So sometimes that's why I play with my dog when I'm having a rough moment, because she is so goofy, and it's almost like she knows that you need to be entertained. So she'll do something that, yeah, just makes everything feel a little bit better.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, and I think we're probably running out of time, but the last thing, like, sometimes we look at certain emotions and it's like, what if you're feeling incredible grief? Like, how do you play with grief? Right? Like, but you can find the song that makes you as sad as possible and you play it and like go into it. Like, just let yourself sob and exaggerate it, like let it be full on.
Yeah. You need that release sometimes.
Yeah. And if you just dive fully into it, like, it can move through you and move out, and then it doesn't have to sort of stay stuck in your body somewhere. So sometimes play doesn't look like, it might not look as lighthearted.
Right.
I mean, or it could be like a good friend of mine who's, she's a chief compliance officer at a Fortune 500 company, and she has a pocket disco ball. So whenever things get stressful in the office, she brings her team in, somebody's DJ, and she turns on the pocket disco ball.
I love it.
And they take a 5-minute dance break.
Yeah, I have a playlist that's, all the music that I can just dance like in that case too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jennifer, what advice would you give to somebody who's having their own crisis at the moment, where they're, they feel like they should be happy with what they have and the life they're living, but they're not feeling positive about it, and having that guilt about the fact that they ought to be more grateful?
Yeah. I mean, a couple of things. One, I have a huge amount of empathy. It's a hard place to be in. And you often feel really trapped. And so the key is to kind of figure out that you're not actually trapped, because it feels like you can't go anywhere. You can't do anything about this particular situation. Otherwise you would have, right? So I would say 2 pieces. One, rather than looking at life in terms of sort of either ors, try and find the and, right? Like, where is the and in life? And then have the courage to find a modality, find a modality that's going to work for you, where you can do some inner exploration. Have the courage to do it, because I know for me, I was really afraid to. I was afraid I was just going to keep seeing monsters, because I had a lot of harsh self-judgment on myself. But in fact, actually, the more I did the inner exploration, the more I could just feel the parts of myself that are so much bigger than my story.
Right.
And so have the courage to, whatever the modality is, whatever, the path that feels right for you, find a way to explore your inner world.
Thank you. That's great advice. Jennifer, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really appreciate it. I'm sure the listeners will appreciate the nuggets that you shared. And for those of you who might be in your car or at the gym or walking your dog, you can always come back to the show notes and learn more about Jennifer, because I will have links there to connect with her so that you can learn more about her and what she does.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for having me. It's such a pleasure speaking with you.
Yes, I enjoyed our conversation. And so for the listeners, I will see you next week. Take care.